last night. I was standing there looking at a monitor, and on one camera was Linda Hamilton, and on another camera was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I thought, holy fuck, I'm making a Terminator movie.
It was relevant back in the 80s and 90s when James Cameron created it, and now it's so relevant more than ever.
Even back then, people were already starting to see automation, robotic. It's already going too far.
It's fun to play the Terminator and to do all this action stuff.
I love the franchise, and women power is mighty in this film.
It was Sarah Connor in the 80s, and now we're three different and diverse women here.
It's just very focused on the characters, and it's just a fast, white-knuckle ride through a techno hell that comes to our present day.
Oh, shit.
Never seen one like you before. Almost human.
I am human. Just enhanced.
There's a certain type of story that is about a chosen one, someone who rises to greatness because they've been chosen by destiny. And then there are stories about heroes who rise because circumstances demand it. But Terminator was kind of somewhere in the middle.
Danny, you are the future.
You figure out pretty quickly what a super nerd I am. So it was really this nebulous thing of what would you do if you wanted to make a Terminator movie?
It deals with the proximal threat of the human collision with a potential artificial superintelligence. And we've tried to recapture that feeling and not get too grandiose and too complex and have a lot of characters jumping backward and forward through time.
Time travel movies are tricky, right? They can be a real mind fuck. So the central premise that we operate from is Judgment Day is inevitable. The rise of AI is inevitable. So even though Sarah took a stab at changing all that and fixing it, she really can't. And what she did was just kick the can down the road. In fact, the new future is worse.
It carries on the true story that we started telling in 1984. That it is a very lovely, linear story that could have fractured off into so many different versions of the future, but still somehow, I think we're on a straight path of storytelling. I'll be back.
Tim's amazing and has such an infectious excitement about this world and these women and the story that he wanted to tell, and he really drew me in.
I don't envy Tim's position. He's worked very hard. I love his enthusiasm. I love his love and appreciation for graphic novels, comic books, his ability as a visual effects artist.
I get his head in position, you film it, and then we project his face onto a piece of geometry that we're slamming into a piece of CG ground.
That is the world he comes from, to create this fantasy and to create this world. And we've seen that in Deadpool, and you know, we will see it also in this movie. He feels very comfortable with moving from directing a stunt to directing you in a very intimate scene.
Tim has this fresh, new vision that is adding to the new vision of James Cameron and the franchise, and so I think it's a perfect match.
Just want you to know that when Danny's safe and this is all over, I am going to kill you.
I understand.
The most important reason for Jim to come back to the franchise is because he knows the material like nobody else. Secondly, he's fucking Jim Cameron, so he's one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet.
I'm a creative executive producer on the film. I worked with Tim Miller trying to give him the best bat to hit a home run off of. That's called the shooting script.
The primary place he was involved was in the writer's room. We did a little author's writer's room at first for just a couple of days, which was great. I brought in 5 of the top sci-fi fantasy authors that I'm a big book nerd, so getting to have those guys in there just to blue sky what this new film could be was great. And then we brought in the screenwriters, so we got a lot of opinions and thoughts.
At the core of Terminator movies is Jim Cameron's complete belief that AI is coming and his complete suspicion that AI will wind up being a curse. But at the bottom of all of that is his belief that the human spirit will always triumph.
I think the way Jim had created Skynet and the technology that came out of that was we knew a lot less about what kind of shape AI would take.
Our dependence on technology is so much more than it was back when the original films were created. So it's not just that the future attacks us by using our weapons against us, it's that the future attacks us by using our complacency against us.
One of the reveals of the film is that the future isn't ruled by Skynet, it's ruled by a different artificial intelligence. The AI that's pursuing Danny sort of arose from a similar set of circumstances, but is a different AI.
James Cameron is such a visionary. He's always there with that thing we don't see, and 5 years later we're like, oh, he was right. He's a visionary.
Cameron does a lot of research before he writes these things, and Tim Miller, before he writes, he does a lot of research. And so they're very smart about what the future holds, and they study this stuff.
There's a lot of good ideas and observations about the movie that come from that level of connection that Jim had. Jim is particularly good at those little details, those little things that make you feel the characters are real people going through extraordinary events. He's always there to say, this is thematically on point, this is not thematically on point, this is what these characters would do, this is not what these characters would do. And he, you know, as much as I think I have a handle on it as a fan, there's nothing like getting that from the source.
My name is Sarah Connor. We changed the future. Saved 3 billion lives. You're welcome.
I think for fans of the franchise, the biggest thing by far is that Linda's returning.
Sarah Connor is in the story. She's returned to the story, which is, for me, being a huge fan of the franchise, that was it for me.
I don't think any of us really imagined that we would want to create a Sarah Connor that wasn't played by Linda. Then the question became, does Linda want to come back?
I felt very much that I had worked a very complete character arc in the first 2 films, from a nobody to a warrior. I didn't want to just keep doing them without the ability to add something to the character arc.
I actually wrote her a very logical email about why it would be great for her to do this. My argument was, people love this character. People love Sarah. They love your Sarah.
Why do you care what happens to her?
Because I was her.
Sarah Connor just feels so important to the history of cinema and action, and obviously she's a woman and that's important, but she's also just a cool evolution of a human being.
Sarah Connor, it's such an icon, and he was one of the first female superheroes that we had.
It's really interesting to go back into our story, and Sarah has lived through events that are from a future that never happened because she changed it at the end of Terminator 2.
It was hard to figure out where Sarah Connor is now. Who is she now? Is she a complete lunatic alcoholic? I suggested that she be fat, because then I wouldn't have to work so hard, but that didn't work.
Sarah reminds me of the seasoned sports player that's been on a championship team for years and years and is able to coach the youngsters.
Linda comes to the set prepared every fucking day. She wants to do all of her stunts.
I will always go as far as I can into a character, but there are limits at my age. Had to go to training camp in Texas for weapons and unlearn what I knew in 1991 because everything has changed.
So that button you gotta push kind of hard.
Yep, if I can find it.
When you see Linda Hamilton kicking ass and taking names, it's Linda Hamilton kicking ass and taking names. It's not a stunt double.
Linda is a great, great addition to this film, and I think that Cameron and the other writers, they knew how to bring her back in a very organic way.
When you see the film, when Sarah comes into the movie, you just feel this amazing sense of, okay, here we go. She's back, she's bad.
Why not just let me have her?
Because we're not machines, you metal motherfucker.
One of my early contributions was to ask them to continue with Arnold. And I said, look, I'd love to be involved with this, but I can't be involved in a Terminator movie without working with my good friend of 35 years, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Everybody wants to see his story. Even though he comes in fairly late in the movie, his journey is something that I think the fans will find interesting, and it's got its own special arc.
The Terminator movie was really the big breakthrough for my career. It was really the first movie where no one asked to show a bicep or an arm or the pectoral muscles. It was all about right here, the face.
Even though it's a new character, it is essentially the same character, just at a different point in his evolution.
We go further with his ability of adopting human behavior. He has been around more with human beings, and therefore now he has become more human.
Do you believe in fate, Sarah? Or do you believe that we all can change the future every second by every choice that we make? You chose to change the future. You chose to destroy Skynet. You set me free.
The journey he went on is a journey of self-discovery. It's not because somebody programmed him to be a good guy. In fact, it's the opposite. And what he chooses to be is a hero.
We spent a lot of time making him probably the most interesting Terminator, T-800, that you've seen yet. And he does have a couple of pretty good funny lines, as only Arnold can do.